Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a short video that hopefully is going to shed some light on the three big variables that we worry about in science: independent, dependent, and your constant variables. We're going to talk about variables through the lens of the classic car and ramp experiment. The focus question in a car and ramp experiment is what factor will contribute to the car's speed the most? In other words, does steepness of the ramp, or maybe mass of the car, or maybe lubrication of the wheels, what is going to make the car go the fastest? What can we change that will make the car go the fastest? So the three variables that we have to worry about, again, are your independent, dependent, and constant variables. And we'll start with the independent variable. The independent variable, by definition, is the variable that the scientist manipulates, or the variable that the scientist changes. In this experiment, there's many things we could change. We could change the mass of the car by adding weight to it. So we send it down once without any weight, and then we send it down with 100 grams extra, and then we send it down with 200 grams extra. So we could change the mass of the car. That would be changing an independent variable. We could change the start line. We could start the car a quarter of the way up and send it down, halfway up and send it down, 3/4 and send it down, and all the way back and send it down, and see if the start line affects the speed. We can also adjust the steepness of the ramp. We can have the ramp shallow, or we can have it a little bit steeper, or maybe even a little bit steeper than that. So these are all independent variables. Now the thing about an independent variable is you only change one at a time. That's the rule in science. You can't change the mass of the car and the steepness of the ramp. I'll explain more about that a little bit later. Variable number 2, it's your dependent variable. Your dependent variable is what the scientist will measure. So I am going to measure how long it takes the car to go from the start to the finish. I'm going to use a stopwatch. I'm going to measure it in seconds. So I'm not going to measure how fast it's going. That's a calculation. And I'm not going to measure how hard it hits the book at the bottom. I'm simply going to measure how long it takes to go from the start to the finish. Now your constant variables, those are the variables that you have to keep the exact same every time you send the car down. So I'm changing the steepness of the ramp. That's my independent variable. Therefore, I'm going to keep the mass of the car the same at all times. And I'm going to keep the start line of the car the same at all times. So every time I change the steepness of the ramp, I'm going to change the start line and the mass of the car 0. I'm going to not change those. I'm going to keep them constant. Now going back to what I said about two things being changed. Let's try this for a second. Empty car, shallow ramp. Four and a half seconds. All right. Steep ramp, car with an extra 200 grams, so heavy car. .9 seconds, about 2.5 seconds faster. Here's the question you always have to answer in science. It's a simple question. Why? Why did the results come out the way that they did? Why was this 2.5 seconds faster than before? Was it because the car was heavier? Or was it because the ramp was steeper? We don't know. You could argue the car was heavier. You could argue the ramp was steeper. And no one knows the real answer. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that's bad science. You only change one independent variable at a time. Let's try one more. Let's try one more. Let's try the empty car again, but a steep ramp. So now the only thing we've changed is the steepness of the ramp. We've kept the mass of the car the same. Measuring in seconds, 2.1 seconds. Again, it went faster, but now we know why it went faster. It went faster because the ramp was steeper. So we've got a definitive answer to the question of why. Now, all three of these variables are equally important. The independent variable, the dependent variable, and the constant variable are all equally important. If one of them is off, the experiment's not going to work. Have a wonderful rest of your day, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's it on variables.